welcome to the Outtake podcast. We're your hosts, Carson and Travelle, and this is the podcast where we're diving into the media shaping our world today.
And on this week's episode, we are going to bring to you our Daredevil Born Again season review. We're going to review the last 3 episodes and then talk about the season overall. And then we are also going to review our Outtake challenge for this past week and set the new one for this week, which is a little scary for both of us. So,
Yes.
But this week's Outtake, Travelle's going to remind us what it was and kick us off here.
Yeah, so we challenged each other to spend 3 nights reading a book, something that we just, going into this podcast, was one of the mediums we wanted to cover. We haven't really covered it a lot. Just been a lot of really good television. It's just been, neither of us are the type to rank books as our number 1, number 2, or number 3 medium from recent episodes. So this was just, taking some time to turn off the TV and just open a book. So, Carson, how did that go for you?
It went pretty good. I waited until I had 4 days left before filming this. And so I was like, okay, I have to read 3 out of these 4 nights. It kind of forced me into it. And it really wasn't hard to figure out what I wanted to read. I've been waiting for no good reason. Just like had it on my bookshelf, haven't read it yet. The new Hunger Games, Sunrise on the Reaping.
Yes.
I love the Hunger Games series. I read the previous installment, which was another prequel, in I think 48 hours last time. So very much love the Hunger Games. Really like the movies and love the books. Grew up with them in high school, so have been wanting to, just haven't made the time to do so. And this made me make the time. And I have really enjoyed getting back into reading and back into that world. So
nice.
It was pretty easy to, once I started, to just want to do it. I grew up with a librarian and a teacher as parents, and I'm married to a librarian. And so books have been a very big part of my life since childhood, and just over the past few years have kind of let it slip away. And so adding it back in, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It was pretty easy, and I didn't fully take out our television watching or didn't fully take out anything else, but just adding in, hey, I'm going to read 2 chapters before we turn on the TV, or before bed, hey, I'm just going to read a few chapters, instead of clicking, yes, I want to watch the 3rd episode of Next Level Chef, whatever the show is that we're watching. Instead of clicking that next episode, I was like, no, I kind of feel like reading. I want to go back to the world of Panem and the Hunger Games and just this kind of dystopian sci-fi world. I want to be there. And especially because we have 5 movies that have depicted the world in movie form. I loved the books before the movies, but it's very easy to visualize this world because we've seen it so much that there's been a few times I've caught myself going, man, I can't wait to watch the rest of the Hunger Games. I'm like, I can't wait to read the rest of the Hunger Games. So it's just been very interesting to have that connection where I have a very well-defined world for me. It'd be interesting after this book, if I continue to add reading back to my intake, let's try something that doesn't have that movie connection. So I have to build the world in my head a little bit. But I think this is a really good way to kind of jumpstart reading back into my daily and weekly habit. So
yeah,
that was mine. How'd yours go? How did yours go?
Mine was kind of hard too, because it was a challenge, and I definitely waited until the last minute as well, because last week it was NBA playoffs started, and that took away a lot of nights. And then there's just kind of what I was saying, television, good TV, so it was kind of hard to find that designated time. And I did cheat just a little bit and got the inspiration from our conversation with Mark. My wonderful wife bought me a manga collection, which is Japanese Japanese comics. She bought me a collection of this volleyball anime that I've been really big about. They didn't finish animation, but the story is completed in manga form. So I just asked her to get me the last, where it ended in the anime and where it ends. And I have not read them, which is silly of me, because it's not as difficult, quote unquote, difficult as reading a book, or as time and as focusing on as reading a book. You have pictures It's a story, same as you. It's a story that I can already visualize.
Right.
So it would be easy for me to pick it up and just kind of get lost in that world. But just because of one excuse after another, I just have not gotten to reading. I read one because there's multiple books. And I read one book, but I haven't read like it's like 7 or 8 total that she's given me. So I
Yeah.
finished 2 throughout these 3 days and just reading that, really enjoying it. Haiku's a really fun story of just this high school volleyball team in Tokyo. And they just have a very unorthodox play style where they
Mm.
have this 5'1" kid as their spiker. And volleyball is a big man game. But this kid just has a
Mm.
lot of heart. He could jump really high, and they kind of strategize their game around him. They call him the tiny giant. So just a really fun, lighthearted
Mm.
sports comic. Just a lot of like typical day life of a high schooler, things that are taking place. I just found really interesting. A lot of them managing grades and then also working with a team, different dynamics of a team, the
Mm.
heartbreak of a loss, the relief of a victory, those tough challenges in between. Like someone who
Right.
played sports growing up, had those locker room conversations. It was a good read.
Nice. Man, it's funny that we did similar things with our choices for what we were going to read. I actually, as you were talking there, I thought about, I have this weird thing with books, and you can tell me if you think it's weird or not. Is I can know if I'm going to finish a book or not, depending on if I choose a real bookmark or a piece of trash I have laying around as a
Mm.
bookmark. So, and this isn't trash. It's a note that we got in the mail for Dash as my bookmark. But it was just the thing that was laying next to me as I was reading. And then I picked it up and used it as my bookmark. Growing up, if I was reading in the car or just like reading late at night, and I would just pick up whatever I could shove in the book to close it, keep my spot, and move on. But if I used a real, actual bookmark, something that is designated, it could be as simple as cardboard, it could be something fancy like metal or wood that's officially a bookmark. If I use that, 9 times out of 10, I would not finish the book. It was
Interesting.
very weird. I noticed it a while ago, and then as I was thinking about, man, I wonder how far I made it in this, which I made it pretty far
Yeah,
in a few nights. But I was like, man, I used a piece of trash. I'm going to finish this book, and it was just a weird thought that I had.
that is
Uh,
interesting. I
yeah,
guess it's just because it's like if you are committed to saving where you are at right then and right there,
right.
that's just because I am bad about, and my wife picks on me about it, and rightfully so, but I'm bad about not bookmarking where I like just
Mhm.
either leaving the book. I will leave, you'll see it in our living room just open, just with the cover up. Like that's my bookmark. So I could just
Yeah,
open it, flip it over. And so because we have bookmarks, but I just
yeah,
never, that's the thing is like when I'm done reading it, I just don't think about going and grabbing one, placing it there. I just flip it over, and then when I get back to it, I get back to it. But then it sits there for months because and then it closed, then I forget, and now I'm reading the book all over again, which has happened a
right.
few times. So
Yeah. Well, sorry to distract us there. I just thought it was a
no,
funny rabbit trail to chase. So, but I think the main reason that we are here is Daredevil Born Again. We had 3 episodes to finish out the season, and this is definitely just season one. I think that very much ended on a note that we are really, or it ended on a note that we are 100% going to get a season two to finish
yes,
out the story. But we're going to start with episode 7. And episode 7 sees Matt's return as Daredevil begin to strain his personal and professional relationships, particularly with his new girlfriend, Heather, who is a therapist and is sensing his emotional distance and some of his physical injuries. He tries to blame it on bumping into stuff because he's blind. And there's some bruises and things that's just like, Matt, that's not how
can't
that works.
can't gaslight your way out of this one, buddy.
Right. But we also have Muse, who is the serial killer who is using people's blood to make graffiti. He is still at large. His storyline comes to a head as Heather unknowingly counsels him in a therapy session, only to realize that he is the serial killer, but it's too late. Daredevil arrives in time to fight Muse, but it's Heather who ultimately kills him, leaving her shaken, and Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, moves further into political manipulation using Daredevil's return and Muse's death to advance his anti-vigilante agenda. So, Travelle, what did you think about the conclusion of Muse's storyline and how that moved our overall story forward?
It was a very disturbing and dark episode. Like, it was the most horrific I have felt with anything from the MCU. And I know, like, Doctor Strange, they trying to hit on that with the Multiverse of Madness, but this really felt unsettling. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
the confrontation between Muse and Heather, not to get like ahead of that to that point, but just that that breaking point of realizing who Muse is, realizing that he is someone who is mentally disturbed. And so that was just really interesting to see play out. Heather's role in all of this, like it took me a while to view her as this new character that is an actual focal point to the story, and I
Mm-hmm.
really do like that.
Right.
Because she doesn't feel like just a girlfriend to come and just be by Matt's side as you go through these up and downs. She actually does feel like a vital role. Like we will be telling a different story if she
Mm.
wasn't in this. It wasn't in the picture, and that tells you that she's a good character to have and to be the one to engage and shoot Muse.
Mm.
Just really interesting that that's how that confrontation played out. But kind
Right.
of going back, just, Daredevil's return and just having him back in the suit, what we saw where we left off on the pod a few weeks back when him finally having that suit and just
Mm.
all the different things that kind of spiral from that. But yeah, so but then to go back a little bit, the interaction with Heather and Matt and just, her being a counselor, I think that's also just a really
Mm.
another chef's kiss to the story of her being a counselor to where she can pick up on these things in the
Mm.
same way that he picks up on things being blind. She's picking up on character traits on how he's behaving and things
Right.
are concerning her. And she even says in, when their early dialogue in that episode is like, I don't want to go counselor mode on you, but I'm seeing things that are really concerning.
Right.
Like, I know that's not fair, but I just have to call it out because I care about you.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was kind of my thought on those two kind of key points of that episode. How did you feel about the overall episode?
So I really liked the episode. I think my biggest complaint is that as much as Muse creeped me out, I feel like his story was shrunk down to a
Mm-hmm.
point where we didn't really have him in the first 2 to 3 episodes, and we're not going to get him in the last 2 episodes at this point because he dies in episode 7. So his story really takes place in episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7. So out of the 9 episodes, he's in less than half the season, and I think his creepiness and his kind of sadistic part of him that deserved more time to develop. And I
Mm-hmm.
think his kind of stalking of Heather a little bit, especially in this episode, I don't feel like he said a few things like, well, you're the reason that this is happening. You unlocked this for me. You're such a great therapist. Like, he had some of those lines that didn't pay off as much as I wanted them to because I don't feel like his story was developed as much. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil show, 100%. So we can't focus on the villain so much, but I feel like his story needed to be weaved in just a little bit more at the beginning, and they could have extended it out a little bit at the end to give us a little bit more payoff for some of those lines where I felt, okay, that feels a little fast for that to take place. So
Mm-hmm.
overall, I really enjoyed the episode. I love that Daredevil was able to come in and save the day. I'm not really sure how he got there that fast, but he comes in and starts to save the day. But Heather's the one that eventually takes Muse out, which, as much as I want to see the hero be the hero, I think that definitely is a turning point in their relationship that
Mm-hmm.
plays out over the next 2 episodes, which it becomes very interesting because of that. So
Yeah.
overall, really enjoyed the episode. Just wish we had a little bit more payoff, or the payoff had a little bit more, groundwork laid for it to feel like fully convincing and convicting that this is what's happening
Yeah.
in this therapy session that's going horrifically wrong.
Yes. I mean, just terrifying. And I agree. I mean, and it, our last conversation about Daredevil, we did kind of have this conversation of how is important music going to be to the overall
Mm,
story, because we know that there is a strong laser focus on Daredevil and Fisk, and it seems like everyone else is kind of, stage B, where
right,
Muse, especially, and I was, Muse, I thought he was in stage B, but he's very much in stage C or D in this list of
right.
priorities in the story.
Hmm.
Because we recorded and immediately I watched that episode the next night and I was like, oh, okay. So he really was an afterthought to the overall story, which I
Right.
guess is fine because he pushed things. Because even though the time we spent with him was really short, his character arc was really short, and just kind of, they tried to hint at him being there at the beginning. We saw him in episode 1 at Heather's book
Uh-huh.
signing, so we've seen him before, but like obviously it just
Not quite enough. Like
yes.
that is a great like foreshadowing moment. We don't see him again until episode 7
Hmm.
without the mask. And that's an
Yes.
issue to go from 1 to 7 without seeing him again without the mask. Because if I hadn't watched what happened on the previous episode or whatever, and they show that little clip of him,
Yeah.
which I generally try to skip those, but I saw them just a little bit as I was scrolling past. Like, there's no shot I remembered that being an
No.
interaction. So I think that that is a testament to, yeah, they could have added a few more pieces,
Hmm.
especially in an episode like episode 5, where it feels completely different and a little out of the
Yes.
ordinary already. Like, where we could have used that time a little bit more wisely to make this story a little bit
Hmm.
tighter, a little bit more convincing, I
Yeah.
think.
No, I agree. I mean, it goes with my criticism of it from the other episodes of like a lot of telling, not a lot of showing, and just
Right.
like kind of expecting you to fill in these dots, but then also expecting you to invest in these other characters outside. And in some ways they're doing a really, like Heather, like, because I mean
Yeah.
I was concerned for her safety. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't,
Yep.
she went from being someone that was just kind of an added in character, someone that really did not want to see die in that confrontation, and was happy
Mm-hmm.
to see that she had survived. And so they have it in some ways, but then in other ways I just don't feel it. And that Muse was one. Like I agree with you on that. Like I think, they made it very clear that he was an afterthought to the overall story, which kind of then is like, why should I care about, you
Right.
know, that whole entanglement? I mean, what follows up after that, I think, is what really is the purpose of
Mm-hmm.
Muse, and the way that the politics kind of play in, because now you have Wilson Fisk and Vanessa Fisk, where you're starting to slowly see what was these parallel enterprises, with
Mm-hmm.
Wilson being the mayor and Vanessa kind of running the family business, starting
Right.
to intersect in a way that is really interesting. And I think both are doing it to save their marriage. And I know that's been
Right.
one part of the show that you really enjoy. How have you, at that part, like this point, how are you seeing their marriage and
Right.
trying to consolidate these things playing out?
Yeah. So I have enjoyed seeing their marriage be kind of on the rocks to seeming to merge back together here throughout the episodes, and it this episode did that, but in a way I wasn't expecting, where Vanessa has
Mhm.
the option to give a rival gang member information about where her husband's going to be, so the gang member can kill Mayor Fisk, but ends up flipping the tables on him, and instead Fisk is there, but his lackey, I can't remember his name, takes out the gang member Luca. And so you have this, she turns the tables and chooses her husband over the possibly better political or, um, business move.
Mhm.
You know, having everything to herself could have been very good for her. But instead, she chooses to partner with Wilson again and for them to work together, which them working together is far more menacing than either one of them working alone. If you have
Yes.
somebody seemingly work through legal and political methods, and somebody look are working through black market under the table methods, you can do a lot of damage to a city if you're in those positions of power. So
And
I think them working together is far more menacing for Daredevil and a lot more for him to overcome. So much so that there's part of me that's questioning, like, okay, how is this going to happen? How is this story going to come to a resolution where our hero wins? And it may not. And they may tell us a very interesting story where the hero loses. We're not sure yet.
yeah.
So that is,
It's,
I've been enjoying that part though. I really have.
mhm. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, not as much the Vanessa and Wilson part, but just Wilson's mayor, just his whole time as
Mhm.
mayor has just been. I like political dramas, and it very much feels like a political drama when we get to him, a corrupt political drama. But
Right.
just seeing the way that he is using the levers of power that he has as mayor, and I guess now that Vanessa is becoming a part of that, I have found that her side of it to be way more interesting,
Hmm.
even more so after the next episode, which we can kind of jump into
Yeah.
here of Out of Joy, where the aftermath of Mew's death deepens the rift between Matt and Heather. While Kirsten confronts Matt over his erratic behavior, Fisk throws a high profile gala to celebrate his Red Hood project. Matt uncovers clues about Foggy's murder and confronts Bullseye in prison, triggering a violent confrontation. Bullseye was able to use that to escape and infiltrate the gala as a sniper, just as Matt discovered that Vanessa was responsible for Foggy being killed, which was a huge reveal. The
Hmm.
episodes end in dramatic fashion when Matt takes a bullet meant for Fisk, collapsing in front of a horrified crowd as the lines between heroes and enemies begin to start to blur. Because we start seeing that Matt was very convinced throughout
Right.
this episode that Kingpin was the one who killed Foggy, and I thought it was just really interesting. I didn't realize how much Foggy's death was still like how much focus Matt was still having on the
Mm.
cause of Foggy's death, even though I mean I had those same questions too of why did Bullseye do this? This was so random.
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I thought it was something that was kind of a closed shut case.
Hmm.
So I didn't realize, and I might have missed some of the conversations leading up to this episode. But when that became like a focal point, I was kind of caught off guard by that.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm still not exactly clear on the reasoning for all of this, even after it's explained in the subsequent episode. And so we can talk about that a little bit more later. But especially in this episode, I'm like, so what's happening? And I saw lots of people, a lot of friends online saying this is the best episode of MCU television there's ever been. And there's part of me that understands that, and there's part of me that went, really? This one? And so I think some of it is a very well produced episode, but to me, out of all the episodes of the whole series so far, episode 5, the bank heist one, is the biggest outlier, the one that makes the least amount of sense to me within the show. This one
Hmm.
is the second for me. I'm not
Really?
really sure it does fit in because of the story that's being told. The other one is so far out in the field of where how is this even connecting? This one is, if you take the other 8 episodes minus episode 5, so you take the other 8 episodes, this one is the one that goes, this is the most different from the rest of the show to me.
Okay, I see
You
what you're
know,
saying. So not, I see what you're saying. So not that it's like out like beyond the plot, like kind of like
right.
episode 5 was, but it's just different. Yes,
It's different.
I agree
It
with
is
that.
different.
It feels different. Yes, I agree with that.
And I agree with you. I did realize that Foggy's death had taken such a grip on Matt's life. He is obviously still grieving throughout the entire show. He is obviously holding on to a lot, even though he's putting on this brave, charming face at the beginning. But as we see him slowly go back to Daredevil, that side of him, that it his grief is coming back and he's having trouble controlling his anger and he's having trouble dealing with it and processing with it, which Heather is picking up on. His
Hmm.
girlfriend is picking up on. And but we get to episode 8 and his behavior truly becomes erratic.
Yes.
And us as the audience, we have some of the information to explain his erratic behavior, but it is still so erratic. that it's hard to recognize him as Matt. And maybe that's the point.
Yes,
That might be
yes,
the point. But that is what makes it so different is I'm like, dude, just like chill out for like half a second and calm down. And so I don't know, maybe it's really good storytelling that I'm just not
it,
enjoying because it is so true to life, where
yes,
it's hard to enjoy because it is hitting on such core things to where I've had friends that have a horrific thing going on in their life and they've had a really bad day and you're like, hey, you just need to go home. Like just go
yeah,
home.
yeah.
Uh and it very much read that way, so maybe maybe it's too real for me.
Yes, I think, and I think maybe processing it as a really bad day, I think that
Mm.
makes more sense for what this episode was because it did feel left field. Like even because, like you said, I knew that there was this crescendo of
Mm-hmm.
frustration that was happening within Matt, and you saw that with the conversation he had with Punisher in earlier episodes. Like you saw that anger was definitely there. But this episode, it was just a whole new Matt, and it feels
Mm.
like, and it probably was that fight with Muse that was the breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that Fist was using this feeling that Fist was using Heather because she was invited to the gala, which is how Matt got there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the political games that Fist was using with Heather, and just the fact that he wouldn't share with Heather that he's Daredevil, something that
Mm-hmm.
Foggy knew, something that Karen knew, something that he has a tight circle of people that know.
Right.
And his girlfriend, he just didn't, and I understand like this is still a relatively new relationship. It
Right.
was multiple episodes, years, seasons before Foggy and Karen got to the point where they knew he was Daredevil. So I understand that, but seeing how she was, almost killed by Muse
Mm-hmm.
and he was the one who saved her, I just thought that this would be the episode where we would get the mass reveal.
Right.
And so to not see that, I just felt like there was this level of just this lack of trust that he had for her, but also how how kind of alone he was in all of this. So yeah, so there definitely was a show of like I just found it interesting that he didn't trust her enough
Mm-hmm.
to reveal to her that he was Daredevil. But going back to your take about this being the best, I really did like this episode. I thought it
Right.
was filmed
Yeah.
really well. The color palette of like the blue and the red and the way they kind of
Mm-hmm.
played on that and the way it kind of got all blurry at the end, like they clearly were, this was kind of the intersecting point. I mean, the reveal of Vanessa killing Foggy and how
Right.
that changes the whole story
Mm-hmm.
and the whole and what comes from that. I do think that this was definitely one of the better episodes of the MCU television shows.
Mm.
I would even say that this is probably one of the better episodes of Daredevil just as a
Mm.
whole, including
Yeah.
Netflix, because of how it was shot,
Right.
because of how high the stakes were. That whole gala scene was just very high intensity, um, just well paid. Like the pacing was well put, and the
Mm.
the outcome was had a lot of shock value to it, which
Right.
isn't always a bad thing.
I think I agree. I enjoyed the episode, and it probably just was a little too real for me because in those moments, it's like you want somebody in your life in that moment to be the Heather to be like, hey, let's just take it down a notch. And I don't know because of their fight earlier, she may not have been the right person for that. Like if there was another person there that could have talked to Matt, we might have ended up with a different episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I said just go home. Like that's not always the right response. Like, hey, let's just
Mm-hmm.
remove ourselves from this situation, take a couple breaths, and bring it down a couple notches. And it just kept elevating. And because they were in the middle of a fight, which again, kind of that dynamic of them being boyfriend and girlfriend and having this, they obviously are starting to develop, or Matt has developed, and she's starting to develop an opposing viewpoint on Mayor Fisk and vigilantes.
Vigilantes,
So
yeah.
he is starting in a place already, and she's coming to the opposite viewpoint within their relationship, which already is on lack of trust to some degree. So seeing that development is very interesting, and I enjoyed that. The political maneuvering, I think, is the part of the episode that didn't work for me,
Mm.
where Fisk is trying to bribe people into money for Red Hook, which is this development idea he
Yes.
has. And that part of the gala, it just didn't work for me in a way. Like I wanted to spend more time with when they're dancing and they're having those conversations. Like that's a classic movie trope for like spy movies, superhero movies, where you're dancing together and having this conversation and gathering information. I love those type of scenes, and I felt like that was cut a little bit short by some of the other conversations that are being had in a back room, which is more traditional of Fisk, is everything happens in a back room. But
Mm-hmm.
there was a few things there, but I think the coloring was really good. The Poindexter, which is Bullseye escaping prison, was very well done, and you kind of learn a little bit more about his characters because, and maybe I'm missing something from the Netflix show. You can tell me if I am or not. That I have no idea who that guy is in episode one. Like he's just a random sniper taking out Foggy. I don't know who he is.
I don't remember him either.
Okay,
Since I haven't. He's probably in the later seasons if he's
yeah,
in there, and I'm pretty sure he is.
okay,
But since I didn't get to season 3, I'm right there with you. Like I
yeah.
don't know much
I was
about
like,
him. He
okay,
doesn't
random
miss. That's
guy.
all I know. He doesn't
Right.
miss.
But seeing some of his powers play out, like I enjoy seeing that there is. I mean, I didn't enjoy watching it; he was killing people, but I enjoyed seeing his powers being used to learn a little bit more about this person that Matt has such a vendetta against, and then it adds more power to him actually taking him out in the first episode. That Matt was able to defeat him in episode one. So I think that that added some dimension and added some layers to the overall story. So overall, really enjoyed it, and I understand why people loved it. I am still unclear exactly on why Matt took the bullet for Fisk. Like there's
That
part of
is
that where
yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm
I'm
not
with
sure
you
I
on that.
fully understand outside of just maybe pure instinct of being a good person was okay, I hear that this is happening. Let me jump in front of it, no matter who is standing there. And maybe that's the story, but there's part of me that's like, why did he do that? Like he was having an intense conversation, and then all of a sudden he's jumping in front of a bullet. Okay, and they don't really explain it a whole lot in the next episode. So,
The,
do you have
yeah,
any thoughts on that?
I agree, and I thought that maybe, in this, I guess this can be our transition into the next episode. I will, I guess, just going straight into the next episode. I enjoyed the episode 8 way more before I watched the season finale. The season
Huh.
finale miraculously kind of stain that episode 8 for me a little bit. It made me pull back because I did leave episode 8 being excited to talk about it on the
Mm.
podcast, having that feeling that this is one of the best MCU episodes I've seen. This is definitely one of the best Daredevil episodes I've seen. This is where I want the show to go, and I'm really
Mm.
excited to see how they close on this. But just going into that last episode, they explained that the finale opens with a flashback revealing Vanessa orchestrating Foggy's murder through Bullseye. And in the present day, Matt recovers from his injuries, reconnecting with Frank Castle and teaming up with Karen Page to fight back against Fisk, who has embraced his Kingpin persona fully, enacting martial law, outlawing vigilantes, and brutally killing the police commissioner. Matt and Karen uncovers the true purpose of Fisk's Red Hook project, a legally protected hub for laundering money and power. As chaos erupts across the city, Matt suits up as Daredevil once more, assembling a small resistance to challenge Fisk's grips on New York.
Mm.
And I don't want to get, I don't want to jump straight to the end, but there are things that I really liked about this episode, and then there's a lot of things I really didn't like about this episode. I love having Karen back. I don't love
Mm.
how she was brought back, but just when you said like that person to just say he needs to go, you just need to go home. That
Mm-hmm.
is Karen.
Mm.
And I know that's one of the things that kind of is hard with the Netflix adaptation, and then this, like, some people don't understand how much of
Mm.
a voice of reason Karen has been for Matt since
Right.
really episode 1 of Daredevil in the Netflix series. So she has always been a safe space. She has always been someone that he can go to. So I knew that this, if episode 8 was Matt's crash out moment, I knew that Karen, this having her back was going to be the recovery. So
Mm.
I'm happy to have her back. I thought, and as someone who loves the Punisher, who just thinks that him and Matt, I just even that, like just how they
Mm,
got bought into the game, bought into this
right.
situation, didn't love the execution of that. Just didn't make a lot of
Wow.
sense. Didn't really understand. I knew and I remember that there was this weird love triangle that took place in the
Mm,
Netflix series between Karen, Matt, and the Punisher, but it was just something I kind of forgot and something that,
mm,
the show doesn't really speak to. So when you have Matt going back to his apartment injured, trying to hide from Fisk and the people trying to kill him and the Punisher is there, just it just feels unexpected, but not in a way that like is like fun, but or I don't know what the right word would be, but just it felt just rush. Like it just
mm,
felt really rush. Um it was rushed to the point where we didn't get really any meaningful conclusion. And that's probably my biggest frustration with this season finale.
mm,
Like I thought that things would be interesting with Vanessa with Kingpin now knowing that Vanessa put the hit on Foggy and there being this almost unspoken rule between Matt and Fisk. It seemed to be like around the people that Matt cared about. And for
mm,
Vanessa to betray that and for that to just kind of get ignored
mm,
and Matt, taking a bullet for Fisk and then that just also being ignored where Fisk is like, oh great, he's injured. Now I can kill him. It just like there were just a lot of different things that just felt I don't know, they just didn't feel right. Just didn't feel like the characters that the direction we were seeing these characters go, a lot of just different things
mm.
just in different directions and I just didn't like how it ended. I just really did not
Yeah.
like where we left off. But how did you feel? I'm the one grappling here. How did you feel about this
So
episode?
I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit. So
Okay.
where the episode ends, I agree. Not a huge fan of where it exactly leaves off. Like probably like the
Yes.
last 5 minutes of the episode. Not a fan.
That
Everything
montage was
up.
weird.
Yeah, the montage was kind of weird. There's a few things and we can get to that. I enjoyed the rest of the episode, and I feel like there was a few misses, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. And some of the context that you just gave me about that unspoken rule that Matt's inner circle was kind of off limits for Kingpin and Vanessa breaking that, I feel like that gives the scene between Vanessa and Fisk a lot more weight and gravity to it when you think about their relationship. Where I think that in episode 8, when Matt and Vanessa are dancing and Matt is confronting her about Foggy, she kind of is like looking at Wilson a lot, like, hey, I need to get there to warn him that somebody knows this, and he doesn't know this. My husband doesn't know this. And they had just had kind of a closure on their moving forward together, but she still had a secret she had not told him. And so for them to get to the scene in episode 8, post Matt being shot and pre kind of the finale at the very end, where she goes, there's something I haven't told you. And all he says is, I know. That brings, I don't know, that brings resolution to their relationship, full resolution to their relationship, where he knew that she was still holding on to that, but he had still fully committed to that point,
Do
knowing
you
that
think
she was still holding on to that, and they're now fully invested as, again, as a couple in their adventure, and as they move forward to not only launder millions of money through Red Hook as they were doing on the streets and through the black market and everything, but now launder billions through Red
billions?
Hook.
Oof.
And I thought that's the culmination of their relationship. I think that is a solidifying of it, and I think that his just I know like that was impactful without having the context that you just gave me. It's even more impactful now having the context to me.
Do you think that he knew that she had all this time, like that
Um,
she had killed Foggy, or that she had involvement in that?
it's hard for me to say because I haven't seen the Netflix series and I haven't seen Echo. So
Mm-hmm.
his Kingpin story up to this point, I don't know as well to go yes or no. I but in that moment, however long he's known, in that moment, I believe that he actually did know and was just letting her hold on to it,
Yeah.
and not forcing the issue, like, because the resolution of them killing her, um, I don't know,
Lover,
lover,
mistress,
mistress, the guy that she was
Adam, poor
sleeping with.
Adam.
Yeah, poor
Yes.
Adam. But while Fisk was away, healing from his head injury or whatever, and they are both holding onto a secret at that point, where he was holding Adam hostage. She had not fully like said I'm sorry for this, and them eliminating him from the picture kind of seems like, okay, we've both let go of our secrets, but in this, now we know she was still holding on to something, and Fisk was just okay with it because he had his wife back, and
Mhm.
whether or not she broke an unspoken rule, he was still going to choose her over whatever system that he had set up when he was the kingpin in charge of the streets. So I thought that was very compelling. I thought that Frank Castle being the Punisher, being in the apartment, and his and Matt's interaction was great. Again, I didn't know that there was a love triangle between Karen and Matt and Frank. Like, I had no idea. So some of those comments kind of threw me off a little bit. But Matt and Frank's interactions, I didn't buy it in the previous episode that they shared the screen together. I was like, okay, it was fine. I don't really know these characters all that well. Here, where Frank comes in and is like, yeah, so did you catch that van outside had blah, 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 these people with these guns in it and everything? And Matt goes, yep, checked it. Did you check, like, the guy in the helicopter doing whatever? And, like, they were reading the same things about the situation. And Matt's blind and Frank has the skill set. And so them interacting in that moment, I loved that. It's not a buddy cop because it's not funny, but, like, I love that pairing in that moment. And then seeing them fight together, two very different styles, two very different purposes to their fighting, and making those work together to for them to still come out on top, but then have an interaction at the end is, do we kill this guy? Do we not kill this guy? And seeing
Mhm.
their opposing viewpoints there in action as opposed to just in theory, which is how I feel like they were arguing about it. I think it was episode 4, where they were
Yes.
just kind of arguing in theory about their different methods, but to see their different methods in action and in tandem, I thought that that worked really well. And then Karen's line at the end after they go back to Punisher's hideout, and she's like, Frank, you just don't care at all. And he goes, I answered your call, didn't I? I showed up, didn't I? And just, you can tell that there's more to him than he lets out.
Oh
And
yeah.
seeing
Mhm.
that depth of character there, not having any previous knowledge about his version of Punisher, having those little moments really worked for me. And seeing Matt and Karen work together, which I don't have a lot of experience with, and to see them work together to figure out the Red Hook situation and how it's this unprotected part of New York City where there's like no rules at all, and they're going to be able to. That's why Foggy was killed, was that he was going to release this information, and then the entire Kingpin empire was going to fall apart because of it. So seeing those things worked for me. The love triangle was pretty much a miss. You know,
Mhm.
some of it felt a little bit rushed. There was some of it like, man, we spent a lot of time explaining why Hector Ayala, White Tiger, was okay to be a vigilante. We spent a lot of time going through the legalness of that. And then at the end, oh, it's this unincorporated thing from 1885 and blah, blah, blah. And okay, move on. I was like,
Mhm.
wait, hold on, hold on. I need a little bit more there for this to be believable that Vanessa broke the unspoken rule to take Foggy out and to, like, I need a little bit more there. I need a little
Yes.
bit more of this martial law that Kingpin is inflicting across the city and why he's doing this. Because it's kind of, and we're going to shut down the city and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the lights go out and you're like, oh, he means shut down the city by like turning off the power, not just like blocking off streets or using the task force. Like, no, he means like I'm gonna fully shut it down for. Oh, okay. So some of those things, some of the details felt rushed, especially since
Yes.
the show had taken such care in detail or care in telling those details at the beginning. So
Yes.
I will grant you that, but some of those key moments really worked for me, even though the very end kind of
Mhm.
felt unsatisfactory.
Yes, and I definitely got ahead of because there was things I did like I mean I did love that fight sequence between Matt and Punisher. The Punisher and Task Force interaction was another one that I kind of felt, even I, as someone who watched the Punisher, the 2 seasons of the Punisher, understands the depth of this character, really like um his, his arc, his tragic
Mm,
story. Even that was weird. I didn't, and I didn't spend time digging back on it, but I don't really understand where the admiration came from this task
mm,
force. I don't know. They didn't speak to it too much
yeah.
in this one. In this, like, there's
Uh,
definitely history there with him
yeah.
being in law enforcement.
So I think this might be breaking the fourth wall a little bit for the show, where maybe in our own culture there is this Punisher symbol that is used just out in society. Like you'll see it on the back of a car,
Yeah,
or you'll see it, and I think it is associated with military somewhat and law enforcement. And so I think there is this Punisher style of justice that some people in our society are drawn to, rightly or wrongly. There is this draw to, I'm just going to inflict my justice on the world. And I think this might be the writers or the showrunners saying, you probably shouldn't idolize this to some
yeah.
degree. Well, not to some degree. You probably shouldn't idolize
I
this at
just
all.
at all. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if everyone who has a Punisher T-shirt or has a Punisher sticker on their car thinks about it that way. They're like, "Man, I just like the Punisher
Hmm.
character, maybe." But I think that might be what they're getting at there. Again, I have
Yeah.
no idea. I'm not a Punisher comic reader. I'm not a Punisher show watcher. Like, I have very little to do with this
Hmm.
character. But just the way that their vests had the skull on it, and it was like, yes, we are inflicting our justice on the world.
Hmm.
It felt like they were breaking that wall a little bit to have a conversation in our real world scenario.
Yes, and I wish they did a better job of building the bridge between, because they definitely were speaking to the police brutality of it all.
Mm. Yeah.
A very high level of it, with even police officers shooting civilians and things like
Mm.
that, and that has a lot of connotation to it.
Right.
So that part of it, and then the Punisher part of it, just building that bridge a little bit more. And I do like seeing him kind of disown that, as someone who loves,
Mm-hmm.
I like, yeah, I don't want the Punisher to, I don't want
Right.
his ideology or his thoughts to be in connection to that any more than it seemed like he did, based on how he responded. And so,
Right.
because his is definitely rooted in a sense of hurt and a sense of justice
Mm.
that in his eyes is pure. Is definitely not pure,
Mm.
but in his
No.
eyes, that is not just about killing anyone that stands in your way, but killing those who are hurting others. Still
Mm.
not right, but that's
Right.
his philosophy and the way he
Right.
approaches it. Um, but yeah, there was, yeah. So that sequence of it, I really did enjoy. The whole city and the electricity grid going out and that whole part of
Mm-hmm.
it, I thought that was just very ambitious,
Mm.
because it's just cool. New York is big enough to where if something like that happens to a city like New York, that is when we start asking the like
Right.
MCU questions that we always
Mm-hmm.
ask when, like, the Earth is ending, where's everyone else? We know that
Right.
there's a pretty popular superhero that lives in New York that we know is in this world because of the fact that Matt was his lawyer a
Right.
few years ago. So where is he when all of this is happening?
Right.
Like, these are, and then like the vigilantes as well. Like, where were they? Like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about, and this goes back to just that, a lot of showing, a lot of telling, not a lot of showing. Like, this
Right.
could have been a part where we saw vigilantes kind of take in the fact that things, I know that, Fist said no vigilantes, but just the fact that the city was under chaos, and
Right.
that, and the political theaters of that, like, I just don't understand the logic behind causing
Right.
so much damage to the city on your
Mm-hmm.
call, instead of letting the vigilantes take the blame, like kind of what they were doing before, like how he handled the Mew situation after episode 7. I thought was genius. I thought,
Yeah.
if
Right.
you're, it was clever. It was definitely a chess move, because
Right.
Daredevil can't take credit for that, so give it to his people. Episode 8, and just the ways that he's using this gala, those things they made smart.
Mm-hmm.
He was just being very savvy, and maybe this is because he's now focusing. He maybe wanted to be a good mayor at one point. I felt that way in episode 1.
Right.
Maybe now with Vanessa being his main focus, he's getting a little bit sloppy. But I just feel like that was
Mm-hmm.
just a really sloppy move and didn't really understand the
Right.
reasoning behind. Because I was with you. He said, let's shut down the city. I'm thinking, okay, cops are going to be everywhere. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a curfew. It's like, no, we're turning the power grid off, like just
Right.
pure black for
Yeah.
the next 12 hours while
Right.
people just run amok. Like that made no sense to me.
Yeah. I think it's hard, like you said about the vigilantes, where you're showing us Kate Bishop's stepdad from the Hawkeye series as the one other example of a vigilante, but we've never actually seen him in action. You're just kind
Exactly.
of supposed to, if you're a super fan, piece that together. It's like, okay, where are the other vigilantes? Where are the other heroes other than White Tiger, who's no longer with us? Where are they coming into play in this scenario? And then where you said Kingpin started to get sloppy. I think that's true. I mean, he brutally killed the
Oof.
police commissioner. I mean, I looked away. I didn't
I
even
did
watch it. I
too.
knew it was
Oof.
coming, and
Oof.
I looked away. But and that's from the comics. I'm pretty sure there's a very similar comic panel
Ugh.
in actual comic books, which okay, good. You drew on the comics to make this happen. But like in front of 20 other people who are also police officers and were obviously horrified about what happened. It felt like that version of Kingpin was the same version of Kingpin we got in Hawkeye, where he was a little bit superpowered, where he had some extra strength, where he could take a bullet to the face and head and survive. So it felt a little incongruent with the Kingpin that, like you said, we got in episode 1 through 8, who was a little bit more Netflix Kingpin, where just like a bad dude, and
Oh,
you know,
I will say this. No, this new Kingpin is a MCU. This was Netflix. That like this moment here was Netflix Kingpin.
oh, okay,
There's a very iconic scene of him smashing someone's head in with a car door, and
right,
in the Netflix, like he was this unhinged in the Netflix
okay,
series as well.
okay, yeah,
It was just more rooted in himself
mm,
and not so much like Vanessa wasn't a afterthought before, which is what led to all the problems that they've been having
right,
since. So this one, it felt a little bit, it felt different because he's working within the system where
mm-hmm,
before he was working with goons and thugs who had guns. Now he's working with police officers who have guns. It's an interesting parallel,
mm-hmm,
um, and it's the violence is still there. But yeah, no, that this episode 1 through 8 was a new fist that no one really has seen before.
mm-hmm,
That I
okay,
think from the Hawkeye, him getting shot in the face.
yeah,
I saw, I watched Echo. He's very important in Echo, and just what everything that comes from there, and
mm-hmm,
that really was the turning point of trying to understand what it means to be good.
right,
And curiosity of seeing like what does that look like for him. Now seeing that that's just not attainable. Like
yeah,
you can't take the king out of the pen. It seems to be the lesson
right.
of that final episode. And now I mean, and
It
I
kind of ends
did,
on a weird note
yeah,
where I don't know, Matt and Karen go to Red Hook to try to fight Fisk and then realize, no, we can't do that. And you're like, yeah,
yes,
no, duh, you can't do that. Matt, you're pretty broken down. And I'm not sure Karen's going to do a whole lot. And, that discussion taking place there kind of felt odd. And
yes,
then the everyone who was opposing Vanessa and Kingpin in cages kind of at the end, I'm not wholly against that, but combined with other things, it felt a little bit weird in the montage where Matt then goes into the bar and there's this group of people, a couple cops, couple, other people I can't even remember in this bar, like, yeah, we're gonna take back the city.
mm-hmm.
I don't feel very hopeful that they're gonna take back the
Yeah,
city.
no,
And it kind of felt a little bit out of left field. Like, oh,
yes,
we're not really getting resolution. But it's
yes,
also not the non-resolution of Infinity War where Thanos wins. It's
yes,
kind of this middle ground where Kingpin is winning, but
It feels like
there's
a
no
stalemate.
finality to it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. There's no. You didn't feel any satisfaction in this is a season of television, and that was kind of off-putting. That's my biggest gripe with the episode. The rest of the
Yes.
episode, like if you do that and give me a satisfying ending, I don't know what that ending is. I can't write a TV show, but
Yeah.
give me a slightly more satisfying ending, then I'm 100% on board with this is probably the best episode. But this ending makes it an okay episode.
Yes. And that's kind of where, and I think that those feelings have overconsumed me because I definitely have letting it kind of not ruin, and I'm trying not to let it ruin how I view the season as a whole, this episode and the next and the previous episode, but it
Mm,
is this, I was so excited to see where we end and what the payoff was going to be for this season. And there are things when you sit back and you look on it that are paying off,
mm-hmm.
seeing Matt in this different situation. Fist has never been this powerful before. We've never
Right.
seen Fist have this level of control. So, this will be Matt's
Mm.
biggest challenge. And we've never seen Matt really extend out a hand to this degree. I mean, we have like Defenders, which is kind of like a mini Avengers knockoff series, but he really is a solo vigilante. So to really expand on that, there are things to be excited about. I
Mm.
just wish they did a better job of getting us excited about it, whether that would be some kind of interesting cliffhanger or at least a serious confrontation or resolution to something.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, and I like your point of, maybe Fist and Vanessa, that resolution being the resolution that we get in this season,
Yep.
and knowing that Karen is back on the playing field for Matt and her to have a resolution as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting to think about. But yes, like it very much did not stick the landing as strong as I wanted it to. But
Right.
that's okay.
That's
And
okay.
so,
It did. So there's part of me that in the background, behind the scenes, they were shooting Daredevil, and they were going to make it an 18 episodes season originally.
that's right.
And
Yes.
75% of the way through the production, they said, full stop, this isn't what we want it to be. And they reshot most of the show and retooled it and made it what we got. But we only got 9 episodes. So there's part of me that wonders if the story is still 18 episodes and we just got half of it as a season and we're going to get the second half of it as a second season. And that's where, because they are in production on season 2
Okay.
and they are pretty far along in it, and we're gonna get Daredevil season 2 next year, early
Okay.
next year. So I think same time, which for TV shows today is almost unheard of. Usually you're
Yes.
waiting 2 3 years for another season, but they are already in full swing on the next step on the next season. So there's part of me that wonders about that, why it was such a, because this did feel like a mid-season ending, not a season finale ending. And so I think
Yes.
that may play into it a little bit. And
Yes.
so, and there's part of me, we're talking about a little bit more next week on some of those behind the scene details of why the MCU is playing out the way it's playing out right now. And so that's one of them where just some behind the scene drama is causing some on screen issues, I think.
Hmm.
So, but
Yes.
we do have run times for the show, so we can kind of talk about our was it worth our time and maybe give it a rating. So, for all 9 episodes of the season, total runtime is 7 hours and 21 minutes, which honestly is not too bad. I
No, not
don't
too bad.
feel horrible about that. I, as a non Netflix viewer of the Daredevil Netflix series and everything, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I had nothing else to compare it to, really. I think I enjoyed seeing Matt get back into the suit. I enjoyed that we got a lot of lawyer stuff and a lot of action stuff. I wish we had a little bit more of details at the end, and maybe they could have shifted some of the story a little bit to make that happen. But other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed the season. I enjoyed that it brought up some important themes from our real world. I enjoy that it brought up some important themes that we are tend to miss in the MCU, where it's tending to get a little bit more cosmic, tending to get a little bit more global. This is a very localized story for New York, and I enjoyed that. I do think that there's part of me that questions, where's Spider-Man, where is Doctor Strange, all these heroes that are in New York, or even our MCU TV shows who are in New York. Miss
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, where's she at? Kate Bishop, the new Hawkeye, where's she at in all this? Like, this is a pretty big event. I feel like we should be seeing something else, but overall, the story was really good. I enjoyed Daredevil. It makes me want to go watch the Netflix series. Even some of the Defender stuff, even though people have told me I don't have to watch it, I really enjoy this character. And so excited to get some of that backstory that is laying the groundwork for this story that we just got. So I thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I would say it's hard to say this is fully worth my time. Like, I don't know if I took away so much that I'm like, yes, this is 100% worth my time. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I'm glad I watched it, and it was slightly worth my time.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like I definitely like looking at that time of 7 hours and 21 minutes. Like it's like okay, I've watched things
Yep.
that taken up way more time than that, and have had stronger negative feelings about it. I did enjoy it. I am happy with the fact that they are thinking beyond just one season because that is one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that we might be talking about in our deep
Mm-hmm.
dive, like these short-term ideas and not so much thinking about the bigger picture, which is what
Right.
was always their strength. So it's nice to see that they are thinking of a story beyond just a one season format because that can also get very just short and nitpicky, where this can they can really flesh out some more things. Like there's still a lot of meat on the bone for
Mm-hmm.
this story, and that is really exciting to see. And so I am excited, I am happy, I am glad that I did watch it. I mean, I love Daredevil, I love the Netflix series. I also want to go back and watch him again because I do want to spend more time with this character and get a better understanding of Matt again, because I do think that they did a good job of picking up where the Netflix series left off, and I think
Mm-hmm.
they still did a good job of staying true to what that story started as. Um, and so yeah,
Yeah.
definitely would say that it was worth my time. Not life
Yep.
changing, but something
Right.
that on a Tuesday night was
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable to watch. I had a lot of this is one of the shows I had a good amount of friends watching, so it just brought up some really fun and interesting conversations. And I do, like you said, really like that it did hit on real time conversations, real time things that we're kind of talking through and
Mm-hmm.
navigating. And I do think that that is some of the parts where MCU is working its best when it's kind of
Right.
speaking to those things. So yeah, I would give it a
Awesome.
solid B, B minus.
That's not our rating scale,
I
Terrell. We go
know,
on a
I
scale of
know.
like,
Sorry.
what was our scale? I can't even remember what we decided
Oh,
our
that's right.
scale
It was
was.
one through 10,
1 through 10.
but there
Yeah.
was there was like we had different categories that
Right.
we. Oh man, I forgot about the rating scale. I don't even know where it's at.
Where we're keeping all this, by the way. They're not editing this out. uh,
Well, I mean, just but if you were to just 1 through 10, just
yeah.
top off the head, what would you give it?
Okay, so I think this is where we disagreed last time. Is that 5 for
Well,
me is average, and so when I say my
because are
number,
you because are you using a grading, like are you looking at it from like a grading scale, or are you
I'm not looking at it as a grading scale, as in like
okay?
school. I'm looking at it
Okay.
as 1 through 5. 5 is the middle, so 5 would be I feel neutral about the show.
Okay.
That's how I look at it, and maybe we need to have a further discussion about how we
I
rate
get
things,
I get
and we
that
can
because I do look at it from a grading because it's like five, that's an F. Like that's how my mind goes, and so
right.
I can see that.
So maybe in the future I give
No.
numbers, you give a letter grade, and we just really confuse people. uh, so if I use my scale, I would say it's a 7.5,
Okay.
where it's definitely above average. It's not the greatest thing I've ever seen. I'm not wholly in love with it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a 7.5. If I use your scale, I were looking at like, I don't know, an 83 maybe. So I guess it's not that big of a difference, but it is shifted into the B category, maybe like a B minus, maybe an 85, a straight up B.
I feel like that.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like that point five. Well, I guess that would be like a C plus. Yeah, I feel like that point five kind of puts it in that C plus B minus category because
yeah.
that's where I will put. If I switch from a 10 grade system, I would say a 7.5 as well. I was going to say
Okay.
7, but I would say
Yeah.
7.5 because it's not. Yeah, like right there, not middle of the pack, but definitely something that I had times where I really enjoyed it, really liked the story that they were telling. They just missed on a lot of different things, but overall, the story that they're trying to tell us is a good one. So,
Huh.
but speaking of a good story, there's been one that has been
Mm-hmm.
so good that Carson and I are moving out of our anti horror movie boxes
Mm.
to go see it. And that
Yes.
is Ryan Coogler's Sinners.
Mm.
I mean, I've just heard nothing but raving reviews about this.
Right.
It's getting a lot of attention for all the right reasons. There's some really cool. I've found myself kind of falling into the hole of not seeing movie trailers or like
Yep.
spoilers about it, but hearing the story within the story of the movie and
Yeah.
like how a lot of the things that they did, not just from the movie itself, but from how they how they shot the movie, but
Mm.
also how Ryan Coogler is taking ownership of this movie in a way that you're not seeing a lot of directors take ownership of, where he's going to have rights to this movie. This is a story that he is telling. He wants to make
Mm.
sure that he is being paid for this. He's being paid for a story that resonates with his culture, with his upbringing. And I think that's, as someone who is a creator, like, and who,
Yeah.
is a black creator, like, I think that that's just a really cool thing that they are like really priding themselves on.
Mm.
So I'm just really excited to support it, to see it. I'm a little nervous, but I've heard there's actually a website I've discovered in this journey of deciding to watch this movie, that there is a lot of like it's called like scaredy cat reviews and things like that, where
Mm.
they will literally review a movie based on how scary it is. Like, is it
Right.
worth going? Like, if you are this scared, or if you are, if you're someone who doesn't like a lot of blood, okay, we're gonna rank how
Okay.
much
Yeah.
blood and how much gore. And there's this one has really good scores for people like us who are not attracted to those things. And so my wife is ecstatic. She's super excited. Going to the theaters to see a horror movie
Right.
with her is a dream that she's had since we've been together, that I have never, actually, that's not true. We saw Split
Okay.
together, and that was because we just started dating and I wanted to impress her. But after that, I was like, this is it for me. So,
Right.
but here we are.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't have much background. I know it's Ryan Coogler. I know it's Michael B. Jordan. I know it's gotten really good reviews and that it has vampires in it. That's pretty much. And I saw a trailer and said, "Ooh, that looks creepy. Probably not for me. Or maybe I'll wait till it comes out at home and I'll watch it then." But because it has been getting such good reviews, and for me, the movie has to be, if it is a horror movie, it has to have something besides the horror element to get me in.
Hmm.
And this does, and I don't do supernatural stuff. Like, I don't know where vampires fall on that, but they're like more fantasy kind of
Yeah.
supernatural as opposed to
Yeah.
like real life, like demons or exorcisms and things. Like, I do not mess with that stuff.
Yes.
Refuse. I don't care if it's the most human story of all time. If it has that stuff in it, I'm not going to watch it. I don't care. This is on the verge of fantasy and seems to have a better and more important story to tell besides just being a horror movie. So that
Yes.
has drawn me in. I am going to do my best to find time to watch it this week. And Travelle, I think you're going to go see it tomorrow. By
Yep.
the time this comes out, it'll be yesterday. But excited to try to fit that into our intake this week and push ourselves outside of our comfort zones. It'll make your wife happy. It'll make some of our friends happy, and we will both probably lose some sleep. So
Yes. Yes.
always
Absolutely.
worth. It's not worth it. Well, it might be worth it.
It
We'll
might be
find
worth it.
that'll
We'll
be
find.
that'll be the determining factor.
We will let you know if it was worth
Right.
it, and if we will ever do that again, because this might be a one and done segment, but
Right.
we'll see.
Yep, and it won't be a full review of that next week. That's just going to be our part of our outtake is reviewing that movie. Our main focus next week is going to be our MCU deep dive, kind of going into some of those behind the scene things where we see it kind of explains where we are at with the MCU today and why there's some dissatisfaction with that within our culture and within movie fandom of, man, they seem to have dropped the ball a little bit. So, and then it'll be important to have that happen before Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four come out. So that is going to be next week, along with a brief review of Sinners and how our horror movie experience goes. So until next time, consume wisely and stay thoughtful.
Thank you for tuning into the Intake Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share with your friends. You can watch all of our video podcasts on YouTube at youtube.com/theintake. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at The Intake Pod, and share your own intake experience with us via email at intakepod@gmail.com. This podcast is produced by us, Travelle McManus and Carson Miller.